Hello, everybody. It's Heather joining you here live. No guests this week, but I wanted to follow up on a few things. So today I'm going to be talking about the 5 most important things to do if you're moving into a new management role from a non-management role. And this was one of the requests that was given to me by someone who'd listened in a previous live. It was someone who happened to be, so if you're out there, hello. It happened to be someone who was an engineer and moving from an engineer kind of performing role into that management role where now you have a team who is also set to perform and what it is that you need to be focusing on. And so it's taken me a little while to kind of just wrap my mind around it and put some thoughts down. Normally, I'm dealing with middle managers or executive leaders in the work that I do. But obviously, the majority of those things are all translatable to what new managers should focus on. And so I'm going to be talking about probably less about some super practical, tactical, day-to-day, nitty-gritty reports type stuff, less about that, and more about the human and the relational side of things. So what I do want to do, though, first is have anybody who's out there, so when you're joining, say where you're joining from. So let me know who's watching, please. Where are you joining from? And also, if there's one particular question that you have for me, whether you are a new manager, you're hoping to become a manager, and you want to just make sure that you have everything in line, ask me those questions in the comments and I'll be sure to answer those as I go along with some of this. This is only fun as a live when we are interacting and when I can see your comments out there. So don't forget to do that and help me out a little bit, okay? So again, what I'm talking about today is really the focus on people who are transitioning from non-management roles. For example, engineers or accountants, and all of a sudden now they're partners or they're managing members or whatever it is, right? And they need to make sure that they are able to make that transition well. So Sajid, hello there. Thank you for telling me where you're from. And while you're in there, don't forget, like when I'm talking, please do interact because that's what it makes it really fun. And I know more eyes will build up over time, more people will be here. And so as we're doing that, I'll continue to just welcome them in and also ask them to post questions inside the comments as well. Because again, this is where the learning happens. It's not just Heather sitting here, telling you everything I know, but it's also you giving me back things that maybe I don't know or sharing some of your experiences that really help to make it fruitful and not just a one-way conversation. So I appreciate that. So the 5 most important things. If anybody knows me, if you watched any of my other videos or looked at any of my other posts, you know that one of the most important things to me is mindset, and that is pretty much for everything. When you're a person who's either wants to be a manager, or you're transitioning into becoming a manager, you are having to change the way you think. For example, if you were someone who worked with your team members or with coworkers before, and then you were the one who was promoted amongst the ranks, which happens a lot, then you have to be thinking of your role in a different way. Yes, you are still a member of the team. You just happen to now be more responsible for it. So when we think about this idea of transitioning into a management role, it means now you have more responsibility. You had responsibility before as a coworker because you had to make sure that you were uplifting your coworkers and you were trying to be a positive role model and being a leader by influence. But now you have more of that title. And so with that title comes great responsibility. And people are going to look to you differently now. So you were part of the team. Now they're looking at you differently. Now, if you think about it, now you have the ability to affect someone's job. Now you have the ability to affect someone's paycheck. So it's a lot of responsibility, and it is an honor to be a manager. I don't agree with people who are talking about leaders and that managers are people that just do tactical things. I think managers, people who have the title of manager, director, supervisor, have the ability to truly impact those that they lead and become true leaders as they also manage from a tactical standpoint. So that mindset shift is going to be really critical. Keeping in mind that the words that you use and the actions that you take mean more as a manager. So in this case, where before you maybe, again, you could just do things kind of on the fly, you have to put a lot more thought into that the process of even making a decision, of even just opening your mouth. You can speak freely, but you have to watch out what you say, because again, now people see you as someone who can affect their job. So if you say something that's willy-nilly, that's not been properly planned out or even just really thought about, you could then make kind of a whole roller coaster, a whole kind of a domino effect starts to happen, and people then start to go, oh gosh, what's going to happen, and what's going to happen, and change, and you freak people out, when before you could have said the exact same thing as a member of that team, but not leading the team. And now all of a sudden it's like, wow. Oh, and I'm wondering, Sajid, if you're the one. So you said I'm an engineer and an occasional project manager. Yeah, and that's actually a good point that you bring up, because often people who are project managers, while they don't have direct reports, usually in that capacity, they are managing a project and therefore have to manage the relationships that are then leading that project. And so sometimes that can get real iffy, because they're not reporting to you. So you don't have quote unquote authority over them, but you have authority over the project, and they have to be part of the team. So I completely know where you're coming from, because I've been in that capacity, both as a manager of people and at the same time managing a project where those people on that project were not on my team, aren't directly reporting to me. Let's just say it that way. So I understand the complexities of that. And thank you so much too for interacting, because right now there's a couple eyes at least on it, and I know they'll be joining more. I want more people to join in, so I appreciate you doing this. So if a manager behaves like a boss, team reacts to him as employees. If manager behaves like a leader, team reacts like his comrades. Love it. Absolutely love it. So when we talk about now this need to think differently, to behave differently, to watch out what we say, because when we're transitioning from the manager to the non-manager to the manager, though, even if it's a supervisor going into a role, and now like you're a member of a team and now you're supervising 3 people who were your friends and you went to lunch with all the time. I'm not saying that you need to stop going to lunch with them. You just now have to think about a different way how you communicate with them, because you can't necessarily just, again, spot off whatever your thoughts are, because you're going to cause different emotions in them than you did before when you were their coworker. So remembering that. The other thing as a new manager is you want to make sure that you build up your resilience, that you're resilient, because what happens often, I remember as a brand new manager, you are used to being a member of the team where people are kind of telling you what to do, and it's kind of fearful sometimes, because you don't know what they're going to tell you to do and what the ramifications are going to be. But then when you become that manager, now you could become a little fearful, because now the people above you are telling you what needs to happen, and now you have to be the one that delivers the message. And there are changes all around you, and in order for your people to remain more calm and not lose faith in you and in the leadership, you have to then learn how to strengthen yourself when the tides get a little rough. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And if you watch my TED Talk, I talk about reframing a lot. And I think in that management role now, you're reframing the new role in your mind. You're reframing your responsibility to the team. But also, when all of this stuff is happening and swirling all around you, which it will all the time, whether it's inside your team, it's inside the person you directly report to, or it's the organization, or it's the customers, the external environment. You have to have a certain level of calm. Now, when I say that, I also do think that there's a certain level of vulnerability and transparency that any manager should have. And so you are going to still have to say, sometimes this is not going the way we planned. And so what can we do as a team to get us back on track? But you do that in a way that's not like, right, like, yeah, you're pulling your hair out and you're like totally stressed. You don't need to go that route, because again, that will produce a set of emotions in them that I don't think you intend to produce. So keeping that in mind. Okay, so for those who are joining, I'm talking about, I'm doing this because someone actually, just like Sajid, and it may have been you, I don't know, but someone came on here probably a couple months ago and requested that I talk about the transition from a non-manager role into a manager role. And what does that exactly look like? And kind of some key tips. And so I decided to put together kind of the 5 most important things. Now, have I left things out? Are there, is this an exhaustive list? No, it's not. But I think these are really if you want to think of it as like from a North Star perspective, if you can keep these 5 things in perspective, you're going to do just fine. Even if you need to like get more training on the tactical or the technical portion of your role, you will be good if you can just embrace these things. So that first one was that mindset shift, understanding that you need to be resilient, that you now you are more responsible for not just you and kind of what you say, but it's also kind of how are other people impacted by what you say, what you do, and the team itself. The other thing when we talk about mindset shift is think of your people as your family. What would you do for your family members if they're going through a tough time? So that if you have a team member who, for example, they're going through divorce, someone in their household is sick, a family member just died. I mean, any of those types of situations, how would you respond if it was one of your own family? When you respond to your team members in a way that lets them know that you care for them, they will then respond to you differently when you need them later on. So think of them as your family. Take care of them. Don't look at them as just a means to your end. What I mean by that is if you have a project, for example, that needs to get done, don't look at them as a means to that end only. Now, we are all means to an end when we're inside of a workplace, right? Because we all have a role and a job to play. But think of your role as one where you orchestrate people fulfilling their purpose. And when they're fulfilling their purpose, if they're in the right spots inside of your team, then they're going to get a lot more done. They're going to be more excited to get it done for you. And you're just going to have a lot less turbulence that's happening inside your team. So mindset shift is the most important thing that happens when you're transitioning from that non-management role into a supervisory role, whether it's of one team member, whether you were in one role and all of a sudden now you're a manager and you have like 35 people. Hopefully you don't have 35 direct reports. That would be I know people have that, but that is not the best situation. And partly that's because you want to make sure you're spending time with the people one-on-one, and you can't very well accomplish anything else but meeting with them if you had 35 direct reports. So my goal and my hope for you is that that's not the case. Okay, so the second most important thing I think that really not even just new managers, but any manager of people should do is to find a mentor, a coach, or even like an internal sponsor. And when I say sponsor, here's what I mean. Sometimes there are people, part of the executive team, someone, let's say you're a supervisor, maybe it's a director level person, or maybe it is an executive level person. It doesn't always have to be a formal program that happens inside your organization. Sometimes we're looking for a program to just pop up. What I mean in this case is you are seeking out your own mentor, your own sponsor, your own coach internally. You may have an organization that has coaching already offered to employees, maybe even new managers. Not many organizations do that, and so the likelihood is but they may be someone though who is like a program that you have internally that are mentors, people who do want to help new managers. Either it's a formal process that HR has established, or not. Again, someone that you look up to, that you see how they lead and how they've managed people and they've done it well and their people rave about them. Do you want to be that manager? I think, when we talked about mindset earlier, it's figuring out what kind of manager you want to be. Who do you want to be? What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be known for in the organization? I do DISC, which is basically a communication behavioral style assessments. And I always ask people that, like, what are your strengths? We look at your strengths in the assessment, your communication behavioral style. When we look at those strengths, that's what people know you for. They know you for that, and it's kind of your personal brand. And so figure out what kind of manager you want to be so that you can then look up to someone who you say, that's who I aspire to be. And once you define who you want to be, you can then find that mentor, the sponsor internally, and just be bold, ask. The best way to do that, though, is to make sure that you don't put too much pressure on them to have to be there for you every single second. But maybe you can establish a cadence where they meet with you once a month. Where it's not too much. Maybe it's once a quarter to start if for some reason they can't give you too much of their time. But having that, just remember, like the most experienced manager can't even do this alone. All managers at any level need to have a support system, whether it's having a coach, having more mentors, having just people that they can trust. You want to establish that trust up front. You want to be able to go to someone when the waters get a little bit rough. And like I said earlier, they will get a little bit rough. So make sure that you do that. The third thing that I want you to be focusing on is the idea of taking responsibility for your development. This kind of goes hand in hand with that mentorship thing. When we are looking at the mentors, it's a way of developing you and keeping you strong and helping you grow. When we're talking about taking responsibility for your development, I'm talking about, reading everything you can about leadership, everything you can about vulnerability and team management and some people want you to talk about your presence and read about presence. I think it's less important, but that's just the value I place on it. I place more value on what type of relationships do I have? How much am I showing? How do I show people that I care? How do I recognize my team members? Get your hands on books of practical tips on how to make people feel appreciated without spending a lot of money. Like that's one thing that you could do as well. Free classes that are offered, whether it's at your community college, whether it's at a college in your town, or whether it's maybe classes that are offered inside your organization, because oftentimes there's quite a bit there and you're not even aware of it. So first, look to your intranet if you have that, or go to your HR person. If you don't have an HR person, ask your office manager. There could be some partnerships they have with organizations in the community that offer classes for nothing if they're already members of that organization. Here in Colorado, there's a Mountain States Employers Council. So some people, for example, that are in HR or other places can go in and get legal training or get other training on topics for little or nothing because they're already members of those organizations. Internal classes that are offered, conferences. If there is budget in your department, in this new department that now you're the manager of, look at that and use that budget for your benefit and for your team members' benefit. Sometimes I know there would be times where my team member might be a little jealous because I'm going to a conference, and I always kept money aside to make sure they could also go to conferences too, because I felt like it's only fair that as I'm developing, they're developing, and how can I expect them to grow and to meet kind of the increasing needs that I might have or that may be expected of me and my team if I don't also help them to skill themselves up. So that would be another thing that you want to also have, is thinking about conferences and what are those. And the conferences you're looking for, it could be something that you like, a users conference related to a software that you need to implement. But I would say more than anything, it would be workshops, conferences around leading teams, because at this point, you're going to be kind of clueless walking in as a brand new manager, right? You kind of have seen things, you emulate people that are above you and around you. But in the end, you want to be able to have access to conferences or workshops or trainings that are outside that also help to grow you and grow your mindset. Again, going back to that initial thing. And then the other thing is owning your own performance review. So you might have a performance review that was given to you before you were a manager, or one that's while you're a manager, still in your first year, it's still so new. Instead of waiting for your manager or a system to populate for you something that you need to do as it relates to your performance review, you want to own that process. You want to make sure that if for some reason there were 3 action items, something that your manager wanted you to be responsible for, wanted you to do or achieve at a certain deadline within that review, put those on your personal calendar. And then hold yourself accountable to those, because there's nothing, if your desire is ever to kind of just continue to move up in the organization, there's nothing that speaks louder than that for someone who takes their own initiative for their own journey inside the organization, because most of the other senior leaders are very, very busy and they may lose sight of some of the things that are in your review or some of the things they expected. And then when you get back to that next review period, if you didn't do much, you can't really say, well, you didn't tell me, or I didn't get a notification, right? So you want to take ownership in your own journey of growth towards growing in leadership, and also knowing that all those management functions, while they're good for the kind of the day-to-day work that you're doing, that you are looking further than that current role, I think, and wanting to progress and grow, whether it's in that organization or another. So keeping that in mind, take responsibility for your own development. And then number 4, listen to your people, and not just the people that are reporting to you, but listen to obviously everybody that's around you. Go seek out information. This would be the very first thing I would do after mindset shift, after you've kind of gotten to the point where you know that now I am responsible for other people and making decisions that are just, that are thought out. You want to make sure that you're listening. So listening, never stops. It's a constant cycle. So that would be talking to each of your people one-on-one that directly report to you. going to talk to other people that are in the same level that you are. So if there are other supervisors and inside of other departments, you want to go talk to them and ask them what went well previously, what didn't go so well, what would you like to see changed? And you would do the same thing with the person who promoted you. And if you have access to any other senior leaders, you want to be talking to them and asking them those questions. What went well? What didn't? What would be your expectations of me in this role? Whether it's a new role or it's just some role that I'm now replacing someone in. Ask those questions, because the more you ask those open-ended questions, you hear them speak, you could be taking furious notes, and it helps you just be that much better in your new role. If you try to go at it like I know everything, oh, I know exactly what needs to get done, you're going to be a lot less effective. You're going to have a lot less respect from those that you lead and those that are at your same level. And so you want to make sure, and they will feel good. So in the process, they'll know right away you're setting them up with, one of my values is that I listen. I listen closely and I act upon what it is I hear, because I respect what your voice is saying, what you're saying to me. And that is a powerful, powerful lesson. And you could teach all of those. And to be honest, you might even be informally mentoring other managers in other areas. Here's the thing to remember. Everyone is always watching, particularly those in management roles. Eyes are everywhere. They are watching you. And what is it that you want them to see? That's critical for you to be thinking about, because when we think about our own brand inside the workplace, the things that people think of us as or what they know us for, we can control that. We control it by what we say, what we fail to say, what we do, what we fail to do. And so in the case where you can informally mentor people, people above them, people around them are watching you. And for me personally, I'd like to leave a legacy, and I want the legacy to be a positive one where it uplifts people, shows appreciation for people. And so hopefully as you're watching this, you are one of those people as well. Before I move on to more detail about listening to people, those who have joined, who weren't on here before, to quickly summarize, I want to, this will also, by the way, be on my YouTube channel. And it'll also be housed here inside of LinkedIn. So you can always go back and watch the entire thing over again. But I would love for you to tell me where you're actually watching from and chiming in from in the comments. And also, if you have specific questions, if you're a new manager or even a current manager and you have some questions related to management, please do ask me those in the comments. If you have any added things you want to basically lend to the conversation, please add that in there. Sajid has been holding the fort down at this point, so I'm waiting for some more people to do that. But again, if there are any other things that you want to add to the discussion or any questions you have, please do it now. You have me right here, right now. So do that. Okay, so one of the things I would do from the tactical perspective when I'm talking about listening to your people, also go and review any performance plans or any performance, if they have any performance reviews that are outstanding for the people that are on your team. Go look at those, and also look at the self-assessments and see if there are any variations between how the team members assessing themselves and how the organizational leaders have assessed them. Those will be really important things to be looking at. I'm looking at some of my notes. I want to make sure I'm not missing any really important parts. The other thing is, here's what happens often with people that are new managers. They come into a team or in an organization, and they immediately want to start changing things. They say, oh, that's wrong, and that's wrong, and that needs to be fixed. Wrong. Do not do that. I'm not saying you can't make any changes. If they're like very low-hanging fruit, it's quite obvious something is completely broken. New printer machines, new phone lines, whatever it is, right? Those kind of things, absolutely fix those quickly. Everything else, you want to take your time and you want to include the voices of your team members with any of those things. So include the voices and also include them in the change. Because again, the idea is that if you want to get more out of that team and you want to work more cohesively as a team, you want to go to them, grab their ideas. They've been there longer. They probably had multiple leaders already that they've reported to, and they know they've seen what's gone right and wrong. You want to just continue to grab their voices and make sure that they're part of it, because if they feel a part of the change, you're going to have their buy-in. They're going to be more enthusiastic about it if they have to defend it to anyone else outside the team. And they also will feel like there's something more meaningful in the work that they're doing, because they feel like their voice is powerful to the person who is in power. And by the way, that is you now. So it sounds weird. There's you may have again been a member of a 3 or a 5 or a 10-person team. Now you're the manager of the team. Guess what? Now you're seen as the one in power because you have the authority to impact their journey more than anyone else in the organization, because they'd have to directly listen to you, directly take guidance from you, and their expectation is that you're going to either uplift them or you're going to put your foot on them. That's their expectation, because you have to remember there's a history there. We aren't children. We've all had other managers. And so just know that when you bring them along in the change that you're seeking, the changes that you're wanting to make, they feel like their work is meaningful. They feel like their voices are powerful. They feel like they're empowered to do good work. That is one of the main things you can focus on as a new manager. Hello there, Laquita. Thank you for actually chiming in, telling us where you're from. Whoever else is joining. The first thing I talked about when I'm talking about the 5 most important things is mindset shift, making sure that we shift our mindset. The second is finding a mentor, a coach, or an internal sponsor. The third was taking responsibility for our own personal development and professional development. And then this fourth one is about listening to your people in many different ways. So listening, by body language, listening through actually one-on-one meetings, listening in team meetings, listening to people that are colleagues outside of your department, listening to people that are above you. You want to be listening a lot and taking a lot of notes and deciphering what it is inside of that you actually, as a manager, a brand new manager, setting up your own new personal brand. What do I want to do now? And now that I've heard everyone else, what are the things that I think are important enough to fix right now? The listening is important. A new manager should also be confident in speaking up for their team's needs, especially since were a part of the direct staff, and knows some of the needs. That's exactly right. Yes, I think that's so true. I think advocacy is very key. I didn't put it really directly inside of the top 5, although the number 5 is about relationships, so I do talk about that. Part of it is because this is a learning for me. I've been managing people almost my entire working career. I would say I had a year of not managing people. Let's just put it that way. And early on, though, because I am an advocate naturally, I would advocate for people a lot. And sometimes I would advocate too much, and I was looked at as a cheerleader just for my team, but not looking at the organization as a whole, or maybe like the strategic initiatives of the entire organization and how what my team did connected to that. And so I did that early on, and even, it's scattered throughout here and there throughout my leadership, where it keeps poking its head up. Where for me, I want to advocate naturally for those who are doing the work on the front line, but I have to keep remembering that everyone is important. And as a manager, I want you to know this, as a new manager, that everyone is important in that kind of chain all the way up, and everybody has a role to play. And so knowing that you want to advocate, but you have to always be keeping in mind, what is the role, the purpose of our team as a whole? How does that fit into the organization's initiatives and the mission of the organization and what the customer's needs are? So now as a manager, you're having to kind of be a little bit more multifaceted. And the more that you can do that, the more likely it is you're going to move up in your role. So now you might be supervising or manager, you might want to move up to that senior manager role or director role. And you do that by not just advocating. So you have to advocate too, but you want to make sure you add that level of strategic thinking to how to and ask, like if you go into it and you don't know, ask your manager, is there a strategic plan or some kind of list of objectives for the organization for the next year, 2 or 3? I want to know what my team is doing and how it connects to that. The people who are inquisitive, you're being inquisitive, it just helps them see how you think. And that's going to be super helpful for your new journey as a manager. Thank you for that, Laquita. That was awesome. So number 5, I have it last, but it starts right at the beginning, and it is making sure that you build relationships first. And the relationships that you're building, don't be a single vision. Don't be looking only at one group of people. It limits your growth. It limits your potential inside the organization if you're only building relationships with one set of people. So build relationships, of course, with your new team. That's, for me, going to always be the priority, sitting with them one-on-one, finding out what their wants, their desires are, what their challenges are, what they have been, what they loved about previous managers, what they didn't like so much. Ask lots of open-ended questions to everyone you sit with. the more that you ask that, again, data, it's kind of storing, and it starts to calculate, and you start to say, okay, this is what I want to do for them. And when you go to them when you're building the relationships, you want to go to them with a servant's heart. So it's, what is it that I can do for you? It's not what you can do for me. What can I do for you in my new role? And when you go to them with that, with an open heart, an open mind, and you're writing those things down, and you follow back up with them to say, oh my gosh, what you said, it really struck me. And I went and I dug deeper, and we're going to do these changes. And it may not be someone on your team, but now by doing that, by going back to them, you've just built up an alliance with that person. And now, when you need them and they need you, now you're there. So you have people now that you can trust. Some of this might seem kind of contrived, but I'm going to be honest. Being a manager now is a whole nother process. It's a whole nother way of thinking. Your mindset shifted, remember, in step one, and now your actions have to align. So I think it was Theodore Roosevelt once said that no one knows how much or cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so with everybody that's around you, if you are setting up yourself as that caring manager, people will come to you. You'll be known as the person that can be trusted, that will uplift you, that will tell you how it is. But all of these things in balance, you'll be that person. As a kind of a dot on that I, going back to this idea of being able to tell someone how it is, right? Being able to give constructive criticism. Make sure that it is, in fact, constructive and not destructive. There is a way to give criticism without breaking someone down. There's a way to lift someone up, believe it or not. And it's mostly set up by the fact that when you built that relationship over time, when you spent time with them, you asked them about their family, you found out what their challenges are at home and at work. You ask all those questions and you show that you care. When it comes time to call them on, let's say, they've done something that wasn't quite right, they made a mistake on a project, you can call them in. Or they've treated someone not in a way that you think is in line with the values that they have or the values of the team. You can call them in and have a conversation with them and start out by saying, listen, I know this is not you. I care about you so much that I wanted to be able to tell you what I saw in that interaction when you had that interaction with so-and-so. And it was not aligned with what I know your strengths to be and who I know you are. And so I want to find out what was going on with you. Having that kind of conversation and having it in that tone and in that way speaks volumes, and it totally sets up your relationship with them as their new manager in a totally different way. So even though you'll need to know the new software, you'll need to know the new systems, the new processes when you become a manager. It's critical. You'll have to know all those things in order to be able to sign off on payroll, all those things, right? The most important things that you're going to ever need to know as a manager and as a leader growing into that leader are the things that people call soft, but I call them actually the most hard and most difficult things to do, because it requires a certain level of vulnerability, transparency, and courage, because you have to have the courage to do it. Ooh, Ernest, hello there. Good to see you. And you're from Calgary. Yes, I always love seeing you out there. And then Percy from Austin, leadership is service. I serve my team so that the team can best serve the company. Absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. I think that if more managers actually had that perspective, and I say managers because while I talk about leaders and leadership all the time, managers can be leaders too. Managers, when we think of it from a tactile perspective, yes, they handle the day-to-day, they do the tasks, they do the projects, but from a practical perspective, the people that you manage, think of you as their boss or their manager. So while you may be growing in your leadership, they're not going to go, oh, that's my leader, right? They're going to say, oh, that's my manager. She's an amazing manager. She's an amazing boss. He's an amazing boss. That's what they're going to say. They're not going to say, oh, he's my amazing leader. So this is the reason why I think it's okay for us to be talking about managers and growing into that role as a manager, growing into leadership. You grow into it. You don't usually arrive at it. Some people are kind of born natural leaders, but to be honest, we're always working on it. So we never arrive at a destination. We were always just continually processing ways to have a better mindset shift, to find better mentors and coaches for ourselves, to take responsibility for our own development, to listen more effectively, to everyone around us, because guess what? Everyone deserves a respect, and respect is shown by listening very intently, and responding to what you hear, and following up to let them know you heard them. And the other thing is making sure, again, that we build relationships first. So, but don't forget who it is you're building relationships with, because we're all humans. So in an organization, there are walls. There's a ceiling, there's floor, right? There's doors. But in the end, we're all people. We're all human. And as that manager, you're walking in that new role. Take a deep breath. There's more responsibility there. Yes, like I said, too much is given, much is expected. But know that you are human. You have to show the human side. That is going to be the blanket for all the other 5 things I talked about. And it is that you are human, they are human. If you get real good in sharing in their humanity, and making sure that you show a part of yourself that's not perfect, and do it kind of often, to be honest, you are going to endear your new team members to you in a much more effective way. They are going to know you through and through, so that if for some reason you're ever called into question, some action or something that you've said has ever come into question, they're going to know you because you've shown all the different sides of who you are. So it's critical. Who else is joining? Because I know it's not just Percy and Ernest and Laquita and Sajid, although thank you so much for all of you, because you out there and giving kind of your 2 cents into what management should be is really critical, because I don't sit here on an island by myself. I am not a perfect manager or a perfect leader. I know that. I'm smart enough to know that. I'm like Socrates. I know nothing. And all I'm doing is I'm sharing with you my experience, because what happens is I'm not great in spreadsheets. I'm not great with like all these with project management and making sure everything is just aligned just so in detailed fashion. I'm not amazing with P&Ls, but I am good with people. It is a strength of mine as a manager to relate to the people and to care for the people that are looking to me to lead them, to guide them, to uplift them, to show appreciation to them. And so that's why I felt compelled to have this conversation and have a conversation. This is because it's why I'm having people comment here. So if you are a new manager or one who is aspiring to ever manage people, just know that these 5 things are important, that you want to make sure you enter it with a different mindset. Again, knowing that there's a lot more responsibility now. Watch your words, watch your actions much more closely. Find a mentor, a coach, or an internal sponsor, someone who you look to as this is the kind of leader, this is kind of manager I want to be. 3, taking personal responsibility for your development. Read every book you can. I'm telling you, there's this book a friend of mine just wrote, Believership, I'm reading now. There's my book on the 7 intuitive laws of employee loyalty. There are books on management and leadership. Read them all. Take advantage of free courses. Take advantage of paid courses. Go to conferences, whatever you can do. Learn and take responsibility for that. Listening to your people, taking that time to be one-on-one with people, sitting with them. That has always been the strength of my leadership. And when I went into a new management role, every time I'd go in and I sat and listened to people, they knew right then, oh, this is a different type of person. This is a different leader, because this leader takes my word as something important. They are going to make me feel important because they're going to listen to me. Sajid, thank you. Thank you so much for saying I'm a good teacher. Appreciate that. But that listening is so critical, but knowing that don't just make it be just about your team. Don't siloize yourself, because when you put yourself in a silo, you minimize your team's effectiveness. Okay, so reach across the aisle to different people in different areas, and even the people who they may have had contentious relationships with the previous manager. Reach across that. Build those bridges, because it'll do more for your team and the organization when you do so. And then again, that building relationships is all about that. It's building relationships, listening across the board, sitting with people. The most important thing you can give people is your time. And when you give them your time and you do it in a way that's from the heart, you're going to do well. So again, like I said, walk into that new role with confidence, just take that deep breath, take it, and know that you're going to go out and conquer the world in 2020, be the best manager you can be, or again, turn into a manager in 2021, because you're going to build these skills up to be that person in 2021. So Thank you so much for chiming in, and for those who have been taking a part of it in the comments. I appreciate it. Again, this will be housed. I'll share it out on my profile, but I'll also have it on my YouTube channel. And there are lots of other videos there on my YouTube channel under Heather Younger. Lots of 1 or 2 minute videos that are there that are just specifically for managers and leaders of teams. So thank you so much. Happy 2020, everybody. Bye.